Welcome back. I'm Peter St. Onge. This is a weekly roundup of my daily videos on the economy and freedom, where I cut through the BS and lay out what the gaslighting clowns pulled out of their hats this week and what is coming next. Job openings collapsed by 500,000 last month. Meanwhile, new data says mass layoffs could be next. Are we in the dreaded no hire, no fire economy? The numbers come from the notorious Bureau of Labor Statistics, who says job openings are down 500,000 in the last month and 1 million in the past year, falling to just 6.5 million. That matches other data showing slowing job creation and rising jobless claims, especially in the Washington, D.C. swamp. So why are the jobs evaporating? Now, part of it is normalization after the COVID labor shortages, when paying tens of millions of people to sit on the couch created the worst labor shortage in our lifetimes. At one point in 2022, there were 12.5 million unfilled jobs, almost twice as many who were unemployed. That led to labor hoarding, where companies hold on to workers they do not need, which has been slowly unwinding for 4 years now. In fact, today's 6.5 million is smack in the middle of the pre-COVID average. It's way above job openings during Obama, which were 4.5 million on average. Still, dropping 500,000 in a month is a big deal, and it pulls openings below the number of unemployed Americans. Now, about a third of the drop was government jobs and government-funded education and health, since federal spending is growing much slower than under Biden. Most of the rest was professional and business services, so cubicle jobs, along with finance, insurance, and IT. Now, those are interesting because those jobs are ground zero for AI replacement, elite entry-level paper jobs. To give a sense, last year, Goldman's CEO said AI can now draft 95% of an IPO filing in minutes that used to take a 6-person team 2 weeks. Take that 20-fold improvement across millions of low-end bank jobs, IT jobs, and cubicle jobs, and it adds up. In contrast, manufacturing construction job openings actually rose on the year. So the cubicle jobs are melting, the physical jobs are rising. And that brings us to layoffs. I've mentioned in recent videos how companies aren't getting rid of workers yet, instead they're cutting hires. But Challenger Gray just released new data that layoffs jumped 118% on last year among the companies it samples. Now, that hasn't hit the wider layoff rates yet, but it is ominous. One of the gold standards for jobs is so-called quit rates. What percent of people quit their jobs voluntarily? That matters because people quit when they think there's plenty of other jobs. So quit rates are holding up for now. They're about the average since 2000. But with job openings evaporating, there goes the buffer. So what's next? Historically, companies reduce openings first, then they reduce hires, then they start with the layoffs. We're moving down that road despite historic rates of GDP growth. Now, part of this is benign. It's federal layoffs, deportation, slower growth in federal spending are all reducing parasite jobs. But a big chunk is bad policy. While Trump is doing what he can with new factories, drill, baby, drill, and cutting red tape that he can cut, Congress has done close to nothing. No new tax breaks for small business, no relief on business costs, no big cuts to environmental and labor mandates. On present trends, by November midterms, disappearing job openings could turn into an army of unemployed who will hand Congress to Democrats, who, given their long-standing love of taxes and red tape, will make it worse. Where are the manufacturing jobs? We just got another weak jobs report with ADP saying just 22,000 new jobs were created last month. That's about a quarter what the economy needs. Moreover, manufacturing jobs actually fell by 8,000, continuing a trend going back 22 months since deep into Biden. So is this 4D chess to the new manufacturing renaissance, or is Washington gutting Made in America? Last week, private sector job tracker ADP reported the American economy added just 22,000 jobs, as far below the 80,000 needed to cover population growth. They also reported full-year jobs in 2025 were just 400,000, down from 800,000 in Biden's last year. Now, overall job numbers are actually strong, considering we fired 300,000 federal parasites who, alas, are counted as jobs, whilst deporting 2.5 million foreign parasites, which reduces total jobs since they get haircuts, go to Wendy's, and get their teeth cleaned on your dime. But the specific concern is manufacturing jobs. A full year of falling manufacturing is not what MAGA wanted. Moreover, this is odd with trillions of foreign investment coming in to build factories inside Trump's big, beautiful tariff umbrella. So what's going on? Well, first, factories take years to get from blueprint to payroll. For example, Taiwan Semiconductor's $100 billion factory in Arizona is 4 years from planning to hiring. Even a shoe factory can take 18 months, so actual deployed investment is closer to $200 billion, about 1/20th of the $4 trillion planned. Second, a lot of manufacturing losses are Joe Biden's crony zombies funded with $450 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act dumped into crony green projects and uncompetitive chip factories. 1,000 Solyndras trudging one by one off to crony heaven, taking the paper jobs with them. Third, closing the border and mass deportations drove manufacturing wages above the 7 and change that illegals were taking. That takes out a lot of low-end manufacturing that could only survive because you were covering the food stamps for the Haitians. Finally, tariffs. So short-term, these make imported inputs more expensive, which also puts factories in the red, for the long-term gain of bringing production home to America. This also happened in Trump's first term, where manufacturing jobs first fell with tariffs and then rebounded as domestic production replaced imports. Given Trump's tariffs are much more aggressive this time, it's much bigger. So in his first term, Trump's tariffs hit just 1/6 of imports, mostly China, with an average rate of 2.8%. This time, they hit 28% average rate across all imports, so about 10 times. So what's next? We're in the dip right now with new factories still on the drawing board and Biden's failures still riding that treadmill to oblivion. We get new jobs numbers tomorrow, so we'll see if it's turning around. But for Trump and Republicans, the clock is ticking. Manufacturing has not turned around by the November midterms. Voters may punish them for a boom that is still under construction. Trump's doing what he can to speed it up, from full expensing to factories, to new electricity generation and infrastructure permits, to a new Fed chair who's promising to finally bring down rates. It would be nice if Congress lifted a finger on the wall of red tape in manufacturing that can cost more than salaries, maybe even cut taxes for Made in America, ideally to zero, to drain the swamp so manufacturing can live. A word from our sponsor. If you own gold, and many of you do, you already understand how it protects your wealth from the insanity coming out of Washington. The inflation, the recessions, the wars. But with monetary metals, there's a way to actually earn a yield of up to 4% on your gold paid in more ounces of gold. You retain ownership of real, allocated physical gold with no storage costs while your ounces grow every month outside the banking system. If you're serious about protecting your future and building your legacy, head to monetarymetals.com/Peter to get started. Now back to our show. You just bailed out the United Nations thanks to Republicans in Congress. This is why America First can't have nice things. For close to a year now, the UN has been warning it's running out of money after Trump slashed U.S. contributions, with the Secretary General warning the UN is in danger of, quote, imminent financial collapse, which is among the most beautiful sentences in the English language. So that's the good news. The bad news is your Republican Congress just bailed them out to the tune of $3 billion. Now, one might wonder what the UN did with the roughly $2 trillion it has taken since inception, a third coming from the American taxpayer. I mean, aside from fund migrant caravans, indeed, in the past 10 years alone, the UN has taken over $600 billion, more than a third, again, from American taxpayers, yet it is in danger of collapse. So you'll be shocked to hear the UN intentionally hides its budget, both the grotesque amount of money it wastes or steals, and how much of that comes from Americans, who the UN spends its days attacking with everything from refugee caravans to treaties banning deportation to outlawing the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, Small Arms Treaty, and of course COVID lockdowns courtesy of the UN's World Health Organization. So the UN regular budget is just over $2 billion, which sounds quite reasonable, but it's actually triple that, adding in the so-called peacekeeping budget. Then the big one, the humanitarian budget that covers agencies like the World Health Organization and the UN's empire of human trafficking, or refugee agencies. So Somali daycare, but worldwide on your dime. Depending on the year, humanitarian can be 15 to 20 times the core budget. Put it together and it's more than $40 billion a year, of which a third, $13 billion plus, is paid by Americans. It's a lot of money, but the question is, why are Americans paying a dime to the UN? In his recent Davos speech, Trump listed the 8+ wars he has ended, noting the UN hasn't lifted a finger for any of this. In theory, the purpose of the UN is ending wars. Said the UN traffics millions of illegals into the U.S., steals money intended for actual crises. Sometimes UN staff literally joins in the crisis, such as the October 7th attack on Israel, or peacekeepers in Congo literally raping children. All on top of an endless barrage of rules written by tens of thousands of UN bureaucrats to undermine our free speech and Second Amendment rights, while mandating LGBT laws, climate totalitarianism, deportation lawfare, and, of course, COVID lockdowns. Beyond the fact we get nothing but trouble from the UN, why are we in it? On its own, the U.S. is a world-striding Goliath able to force other countries to do exactly what we like, see Greenland or Venezuela. The UN replaces that with a union of pygmies who can and do gang up on the U.S. It's bonkers that we actually fund that. So last year, Trump slashed the money we give the UN, cutting humanitarian by 3/4, proposing to replace the billions we give to peacekeepers with a genuinely U.S.-led board of peace, and making zero regular dues so far this year. Meanwhile, Trump pulled out of 66 international organizations, including 33 UN agencies, ranging from climate change to the World Health Organization. The obvious next step was leave the corrupt anti-American UN altogether. As Senator Kennedy notes, why pay them when they'll hate us for free? Instead, Republicans in Congress just handed them a bailout. AI is eating up the electricity, scooping up what survives the gauntlet of the climate change jihad. Will your toaster have to compete with city-sized data centers, powering everything from cancer cures to dancing cats? A new report from the Department of Energy projects AI data center electricity use will double to 945 terawatt hours by 2030, which is more electricity than the country of Japan. If nothing's done, this could send household electric bills soaring when so-called renewables have already done a number in states like California and New Jersey. Last year alone, electric bills spiked 16% in New Jersey. That's 5 times faster than inflation. Maine was closer to 30%. Californians now pay 31 cents per kilowatt, about 4 times what they pay in North Carolina. Trump has been trying to fight this with permits for fossil fuels while closing ridiculously expensive windmill projects. But all that is slamming into the tsunami of AI data centers. A single data center near New Orleans is projected to consume more energy than the city of New Orleans. Another in Wyoming will use twice the electricity of the entire state. So it's the solution, love it or hate it, AI is not going away. It has overwhelming applications in business, medical and R&D, and military, where China is hot on our heels, but it needs a lot more generation. So Trump took a big step in a recent order, forcing AI companies to build their own generation using an auction mechanism. Now, this is clever because it increases power generation and protects households. And it contrasts with Democrats who want price ceilings on electricity that, like all price ceilings, will deliver shortages, also known as blackouts. California actually tried ceilings in the 2000s for internet data centers, leading to 38 days of blackouts, $50 billion of loss, and led to the bankruptcy of their main energy company, PG&E. In contrast, Trump CEO already has $15 billion in commitments to pay for new generation, all paid by AI companies. Elon Musk wants to go even further, building AI data centers in space. So the idea is orbital data centers powered by solar that's 5 times more efficient than Earth. There's no atmosphere in the way. Plus, it's always on. The sun always shines in space. He thinks these could be 30 to 50% cheaper than Earth. And of course, it has zero impact on electric bills or water use, which you need to cool data centers here on Earth. Now, Elon filed for up to 1 million satellites. That's up from 11,000 with Starlink today. The key for AI in the sky, which he'll probably call Skynet because Elon, is launch costs. SpaceX's Falcon Heavy is currently only 2/3 reusable. Part that takes the satellite into position, the second stage, has to be thrown away each time. So this is like flying to Tokyo and throwing away a third of the plane, which would make it very expensive. Elon's planning full reusability in the next year or two, which would make orbital AI feasible, starting with high-dollar applications like military, and then expanding with economies of scale. So as next, AI has voracious appetite for energy. Trump's turning this from bug to feature, forcing rich tech companies to fund their own generation. Elon, as usual, is reaching for the stars. For now, electric bills will keep getting hit from AI and expensive renewables, but at least some help is on the way. A word from our sponsor. One of the best ways to secure your Bitcoin is with a hardware wallet, a physical device that lets you keep your coins offline without internet connection. One of the most trusted names in hardware wallets is CoinKite, maker of the famous block clock. CoinKite devices are made in Canada and they're run by passionate Bitcoiners who've been at this since 2012, back when Bitcoiners were trading in person at swap meets. You can pick up hardware wallets and plenty of other goodies at coinkite.com/ProfSaintAnge. That's CoinKite.com/ProfSaintAnge. Okay, back to our show. Florida just made gold and silver coins legal tender, joining a dozen states making up 1/4 of the population of our fair republic. Is it the end of the road for the confetti the Federal Reserve prints in the basement? Florida's new legal tender law is set to kick in this year, recognizing gold and silver coins as legal tender for buying and selling, for debts and taxes, and explicitly protecting contracts made in specie, as in you can sell a container of ShamWows for an ounce of gold, and courts will enforce it. Now, Florida joins a dozen states, including Texas, West Virginia, and Arizona, that have passed similar laws. In all cases, you're not required to use gold and silver. Both sides have to agree, so it's parallel money to the infamous Federal Reserve note. Like the dollar, it means no capital gains tax. If you like your gold, you can keep your gold. So what does this do to the dollar? Alas, states can only do so much. For gold and silver to replace the dollar, you need Washington to open the banking system. Specifically, equal treatment of gold and silver bank accounts and the all-important Federal Reserve master accounts, which allow banks to move money with each other, called clearing, and to access ACH so you can pay your mortgage from your bank account. Without that, gold and silver will remain fringe. Of course, the Fed and legacy banks will fight this with everything they've got because the Fed cannot print physical gold or silver, meaning gold or silver bank accounts ends the permanent Federal Reserve bailout of fictional reserve banking that feeds your life savings into the Wall Street inflation factory. To illustrate, today when you get a loan or mortgage, the bank requires you to open an account at that bank. Now, you might think that's weird. You don't want a loan, you want an account. But the reason is the bank is not handing you money from the vault. It is literally printing the dollars from thin air. It can do this because the Fed promises to bail it out if it ever runs out of cash. So a counterfeiting cartel siphoned directly out of your pocket. Of course, the Fed also gets in the action, printing their own money in the basement called quantitative easing or QE. But most of the money is printed on Wall Street. Now, gold and silver break this because without bailouts, they can't counterfeit. Without counterfeits, they can't feed the boom-bust cycle of inflation, recession, and bailout. Now, Wyoming's Caitlin Long actually tried this, opening a full reserve bank in 2020 called Custodia, which held 100% of deposits in the vault. In other words, it was what people think banks do. She got a license from Wyoming, but was shut out by the Fed and OCC, who know it would gut Wall Street. After all, why would anybody park money in a bankrupt casino when you can park it in a safety deposit box? So as next, getting back to the gold standard or gold and silver standard is ideal, but absent a major crisis, the most viable path is this one of parallel currencies. 1 in 4 states are now on board. It is now up to Trump and Congress to open master accounts and level the playing field. If they succeed, it blows a hole below the waterline of the fictional reserve boom-bust factory that puts Americans on food stamps to keep Wall Street in hookers and yachts. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and go to petersanons.com for daily videos and in-depth articles with charts and all the gory details. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.